All right, welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Zone. I'm your co-host Tom Spitalere with my co-host Bob Mcdermott. Good morning, Bob. How we doing?
Good morning, guys.
So today we have a very special guest, Jason Morse, 17 years in the Bigfoot community, based out of New Hampshire. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we're just going to do this real quick here. Just want to. Last night was a interesting night for me. A very close friend of mine in the paranormal, who I've been on his radio show. He's been on my TV shows and different things I've done. Was a big supporter of Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts, which is one of my biggest fundraisers I run every year. Paulino, may he rest in peace. He passed away last night. Over 50 years in the paranormal. He worked on some of the biggest cases you can think of, from the Bridgeport haunting to other things he can't even talk about, but Bridgeport was one of his biggest ones. He worked there with Ed and Lorraine Warren back in the 60s. So, Paul, keep flying high out there, and the flap areas will continue to grow. And thank you for all you did in the paranormal, my friend. Thank you.
Rest in peace.
Yes, may you rest in peace,
Paul.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Jason, sorry that we had to go through that this morning, but Paul's a very good friend of mine. But thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, Bob, I'll let you take it away for a few.
Yeah, I think I should, first of all, explain that I've been on 2 investigations with Jason over the years, and very honestly, I was shocked at the evidence that we uncovered on those 2 investigations. Jason and his team do a great job. I think our listeners should be aware that Jason is an expert in UFOs, Bigfoot research. He's dedicated his life to that. Jason, just to get us rolling here, would this statement be accurate that with 90% confidence level that Bigfoot does exist?
No.
Okay.
It is 100% for certain Bigfoot exists. I've seen him on 3 different occasions. I've seen 1, I should say.
Yep. So
there is no doubt in my mind that a large bipedal primate, somewhere between ape and human, absolutely exists in this world.
So do you think that this is from a crossbreed?
No.
You don't think it's a crossbreed between an ape and something else?
No, I believe that it's a strand of evolution by itself. I don't think it's a crossbreed.
Yeah.
It may be the missing link, but
wow.
I'm not a scientist, so I'm not sure.
That's interesting. Is there a difference between Bigfoot and Sasquatch?
Nope.
So the name is just used differently, correct?
Bigfoot is the common American term for this creature.
Yeah.
And Sasquatch is the Native American term for the same creature. I mean, such as the Yeti, which is the Himalayan version of the exact same creature again.
Right. And it's interesting, Jason, that this branding of this creature, whether we call it Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, it really is a worldwide phenomena, correct? I mean, we're seeing this everywhere, not just in the Pacific Northwest or New Hampshire or whatever, but we're really seeing this on a global level.
Absolutely. There have been cave paintings found all across the globe of large, the paintings depict large of seemingly hairy, ape-like creatures for tens of thousands of years.
Mm.
And almost every place in the world has had some kind of stories about these fantastical, giant, hair-covered, bipedal creatures since long before global interaction was available.
Right. You know, I sometimes make the analogy when we're talking about this to pyramids, that if you go back and look at the pyramids, there were pyramid structures found all over the world, not just in Egypt. So, you know, the question begs itself, how did those get there? In Bigfoot, it is a global thing. So to me, why doesn't the scientific community do more investigation/research into Bigfoot? Tough question.
That is the question that so many people wonder, and it's because the concept to some people are so fantastical that they don't want to even conceive the possibility that this being exists. I mean, they don't have a body because that's what they want. They have no DNA evidence that's substantiated. I think the scientific community is basically just against the whole concept of Bigfoot.
Bob.
Yeah, and I think too that listeners have to understand, you know, because we get the question all the time: if Bigfoot exists, why haven't we found a body? Why haven't we found bones? Why haven't we found DNA? Jason, please comment on this, but I think it's because they may be a nocturnal being that only come out at night. And we have here in New Hampshire, and certainly all over the nation, we have millions of acres of undiscovered land. You go out to the Southwest Pacific, there are virtually hundreds of thousands of acres that nobody's ever been in before. So I just look at it and say, how can you say that it might not exist or it hasn't been found when you don't know what its real habitat is?
Well, and that leads me to a question for both of you gentlemen. How many times have you seen a bear carcass out in the woods or a moose carcass?
Yes. Yep.
Well,
I agree.
I'll agree, but all the years I've been out in the backwoods country of New Hampshire, I think I might have seen one moose carcass in my life, and that's, 40 plus years.
Yeah. So with that thought in mind, Tom, why are people so quick to go to why haven't we found a body?
Right. And the other thing is, I want to back up one thing. I had one more question to ask Mr. Moore. We talked about a few minutes back, you talked about Sasquatch being Native American, Bigfoot being American, and then you talked about the Yeti and how they're all intertwined. But here in the United States, we have wood devils in New Hampshire, and we got the skunk apes of Florida. So where does that fall into that line?
And I think they're all basically the same creature. I understand that the skunk apes are smaller, and the wood devils are also smaller, and I don't have an answer for why that is. I know that the Sasquatch / Bigfoot that I saw was absolutely massive.
How big?
Huge. He was 9'6".
Oof.
Probably 1,000 pounds.
That would scare the living daylights out of me.
Majestic.
That would scare the living daylights out of me.
and yet, Jason, most reports about Bigfoot, people that are like yourself that have actually come in contact with it, they don't find this being to be aggressive. There were stories of they throw rocks to get your attention. They, pound on trees. They do that kind of stuff. And yet, there's never been, to my knowledge, a report of a Bigfoot attacking anybody or killing anybody.
I've heard one report
Yep.
of a Sasquatch actually kidnapping a man. I forgot the man's name. It was early 1900s. He was asleep in his sleeping bag, and according to him, a Bigfoot came upon his campsite, scooped him up in his sleeping bag, and carried him off. And he was basically held there with his clan. There was a male, 2 juveniles, and a female. He was held there for almost a week, and he wound up escaping only by giving the dominant male a bunch of chewing tobacco, which made the Sasquatch ill, and he escaped that way. That's the only negative thing that I've ever heard.
That's an interesting story.
It is, and the other part of that story is that this group of people that were kidnapped, if you will, they didn't do any real damage to them. They didn't injure them or hurt them while they were in captivity.
No, he said it was. According to the report that I read, it was very peaceful. He scooped him up in his sleeping bag and hauled him off, took him back to his clan, and there was no harm done to him at all. But
wow.
he wanted to get away because, of course, he was scared to death. And it wound up taking a bit of chewing tobacco to make the dominant male ill for him to escape.
Wow, that really is. Now, do you know where that happened? What area?
I believe it was in the Pacific Northwest.
It was, okay. Jason, are there any statistics? I tried to find some the last couple of days. Are there any statistics that show where the majority, it would be in the Pacific Southwest because of its size, but let's deal with New Hampshire. Is there any one area that seems to be more active with Bigfoot than other areas?
Well, Bob, during our talks previously, I would say that around the Newmarket area was pretty dominant, but I would have to say the White Mountains.
Yeah, well, because of its size.
Mount Major, Mount Hood.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of open space out there. Now, that's an interesting question you brought up, Bob and John. That was a great answer. But if you go back, when I looked at Bigfoot reports, and I do a little bit of everything, like I told you off the air, Jay, before we went on. In the 70s, the 60s and the 70s, the Merrimack River Valley of Massachusetts and New Hampshire had a lot of sightings. Now they're going north, which leads me to believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, with all the development we're having in this area, and including the Newmarket area, I'm wondering if we're, pushing animals further north, like we've done other animals.
Well, we as humans are continuously disturbing wildlife in general. We keep on building infrastructure, putting in housing developments. We are the worst curse for nature itself, and that includes the Bigfoot community.
Mm-hmm. Especially in southern New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in southern New Hampshire. In I don't know if you're familiar with this. I'm sure you are. In last year, I think it was 2023, a lot of Bigfoot were identified in Rochester, but it was downtown Rochester.
Yes.
That I believe the guy's name is Jeff Besson, Bisson, that spotted all these Bigfoot. So maybe what we just said is more accurate than anybody will admit to, that we're pushing the habitat out into communities because, frankly, they don't have a place to live. I don't know that happens in the White Mountains, Jason.
To quote Sheldon Cooper, hokum. They had cardboard cutouts of Bigfoots all over the town. And that's what they was calling their Bigfoot searching.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nothing even remotely real. It was a ploy to get kids out in the town and doing stuff.
Yeah, and we all deal with this in the paranormal.
Those cardboard cutouts set up all over town. That's what it was.
Yeah. It's too bad that happens because people then tee off on the fraudulent part of these things, then they tee off on the actual part of these things, unfortunately. And we deal with the paranormal all the time when people try to fudge something and they get caught, and they usually do. UFO researchers will tell you the same thing. The people that take pictures of pie plates ruin it and distract from the attention that we should be looking at, and that's what's real. I always say, if you take anything, Bigfoot, ghost hunting, UFOs, if you have 10 sightings, well, let's argue and say that 80% of them are fraudulent. 80%. 8 out of 10. Why don't we focus on the 2 that aren't? Because isn't that really what's important? Not the ones that are frauds, but the ones we can't detect why. But we do it constantly.
Well, see, the sad part is, because 8 out of the 10 are fraudulent, the 2 that are actual are not believed as much as they should be because of the 8 fraudulent ones.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%, and it's sad. It's really sad. It's very frustrating as a researcher that we have to deal with that.
Yeah, frankly, there is nothing that angers me anymore than a complete and total hoaxer. People who just perpetuate hoaxes are ruining and defiling everything that I'm trying to do in this community.
Yeah, it must be very frustrating for you. And the 2 investigations I went on, your team and yourself was just so on the mark and so dedicated and so real. One thing I took away from that to WSCA was the fact that you were just so dedicated and real about what you were doing. I know at one point we found something and you debunked it right away. And I thought, see, there's an investigator, Jason Morse, that really is searching for the truth, not just trying to create the truth.
The way I see it is there is only the truth. And if I don't believe it to be 100% the truth, I'm not going to say it. I will not perpetuate a hoax. I am a member of one of, if not the greatest research teams that I've ever come across with the Crypto Crew. Our founder, Thomas Markham, is one of the greatest people that I've ever known. He's a great man. He's a good friend of mine. And every single member of the Crypto Crew is 100% dedicated to the truth. And I cannot stand people that want to perpetuate hoaxes.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
I think they perpetuate the hoax, and it kills the field. It doesn't matter if it's crypto, UFO, paranormal, because this show covers everything. But I think they do it because they want their 15 minutes of fame. I mean, let's look at some of the big show. Okay, WWE's on my head. The TV shows that have come out. Okay.
That I will not. I could name 10 names right now of people who have severely damaged the field of Bigfoot research.
Well, I'm going to mention one myself, and I'm not going to mention him by name. I'm just going to mention the show. I watched a third of an episode of it and said, this is sickening and disgusting. Okay? I used to do a lot of hunting with my grandfather. And the first rule of hunting is when you go to shoot something, you make sure you see it. Okay? Yeah. So there was this ridiculous show called, I think it was called Killing Bigfoot or Hunting Bigfoot, where they would just shoot in the dark woods. What happens if some kid was walking out in the woods late at night? You going to kill him too? Or some guy? I mean,
yeah,
I watched a third of that show and went, this is ridiculous, and I can see where this field's going as a whole. Not just the Bigfoot field, the paranormal, the cryptid, the whole field as a whole. And went, this is ridiculous.
Jason, are you familiar with the TV show Finding Bigfoot?
I really wish I wasn't, but yes. I am, frankly, and I am sorry for saying so right on your podcast, I am
That's okay.
Not a fan of Matt Moneymaker. He is interested in making money.
Well, that should give you the name just alone. Whenever I saw the show and it came out the way it did, Matt Moneymaker, I'm like, okay, this guy's got one thing in mind, and he already told us what he wants to do: make money.
Yeah. Well, the reason I brought it up was that.
Hold on.
I will say that his protege, I shouldn't call him a protege, his team member, Cliff Barrettman, he is one of the finest, well-tuned, brilliant people that I've ever met. And I've met him in person. I've actually been to the Finding Bigfoot Town Hall meeting in New Hampshire. And Cliff Barrettman is one of my, in this field, he is one of my favorite people.
The reason that I brought that show up was that they filmed a town meeting in North Conway, and they had 500 people that admitted that they actually saw a Bigfoot. So that's a lot of people in a condensed area that claim a sighting. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
And you were at that
you
meeting.
wonder the validity behind that particular
town meeting.
Bob, he was at that town meeting. Let's see. What was your take on that town meeting?
Well, Moneymaker was full of hot air. I feel as though I have to be very careful with my words right now.
Sure.
If you don't want to explain it, that's an overview.
Yeah,
how about a quick overview? What did you think of most of the people talking about the sightings without mentioning names? I'm talking about the public. We're not talking the people putting it on.
Well, I will say that Renee and Cliff were amazing, wonderful people. Renee, as a skeptic, was very kind, considerate, and understanding. Cliff is an absolute genius. He was great. The people that I heard talking about their stories, There was some that I was like, nah, I don't think so. And there was some that I was like, this is something that I want to get into. But I wasn't able to because, well.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine.
Experience. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jason, this is probably a great spot to give people that are listening to this podcast your information as to if somebody would like to get a hold of you, how would they do that? Do you mind putting that out?
No, I don't mind at all. They could go to thecryptocrew.com, and there's a link there to meet the team, and you can email individual team members or our founder, my good friend Thomas Markham. We have a bunch of new members now. I think we're 18 strong now, I believe.
Wow,
that's
great.
Across the country. Anybody could just find me on Facebook. I'm Jason Morse.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That gives everybody an opportunity to reach out to you if they have evidence and stories that they'd like to share. I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah,
Tell me about you. Certainly do more than just Bigfoot research.
If they have evidence, I will gladly look at it. If they have questions, if they're curious about something,
great.
I'm fine with everything. I love talking about it.
Okay, so besides Bigfoot, you've done some other things probably related to Bigfoot, and you did a documentary, correct?
Yeah, it's called Bigfoot Witness: The Jason Morse Story. It's almost an hour-long documentary, produced by Zombie Media, which is Thomas Markham's company. I thought he did a good job with it, and I had a lot of fun filming it. Most of it was cell phone footage. Some of it was more professionally done, but a lot of it was just on-the-scene cell phone footage. We had a really good time.
Yeah. Where can people find that, Jason?
It's available on Tubi, Amazon Prime, and I think there might be another format, but Tubi is free, and
right.
You can find it on Amazon Prime.
Great, that's wonderful. So I think people should look at that documentary if they have interest in Bigfoot.
Right. So, Jason, quick question. On Tubi, what's it under, documentaries?
Yeah.
Okay. For people who don't know Tubi, if you go to Tubi, you're going to see movies, you're going to see daytime drama, you're going to see Columbo and all those great shows, and then you keep scrolling down to documentaries, and then you look for the Jason Morse story.
No, you could always just search for Bigfoot Witness.
Oh, Bigfoot Witness. Okay, yep, in the search bar. I always forget about the search bar because I'm a big Tubi guy.
Yeah, well, I like Tubi too, so I'm going to look this up today. But I think that's great to give people an opportunity to go find that and look at that. And besides the documentary, Jason, you wrote a book.
Yes, I did. Completely.
Tell us about your book.
Bigfoot. It's a Western novel. It's graciously been 5-starred over Amazon continuously. So
wow.
I guess it's favorable to people.
So I hear a movie coming out?
I would like for there to be a movie for this book, but I'm not sure yet. It's The Road to Leadville. It's a Western saga. And not for the faint of heart. There's some language, some violence, but...
Well, you can't write about the Western. You can't write about the Western expansion without having language and some violence, because it was very violent out there.
Yes, sir.
And where can people buy this book?
Currently, the best place to purchase the book is Amazon.
Okay.
All they have to do is plug in the search bar, The Road to Leadville, and, well, actually, they could search for my name, and the documentary and the book will come up.
Oh, together?
Well, they'll be separate. Like,
oh, okay. Yeah, all right. But you can find both of them the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. What was the motivation to write the book, Jason?
About 9 years of deep thought. I had an idea in my head, and many years ago, I wrote like the first 6 chapters, and then just got busy with life. Actually, I got busy doing Bigfoot stuff. And then I happened to come across those 6 chapters on my laptop, and I reread what I had written, and I was like, that's really not half bad.
Yeah.
So I just dove into it.
Wow, that's so great.
And then finished it up and got it published. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Looking to get a second one going.
With the same title? Return to Leadville, or are you going to do something different?
So, one of the main characters in the book is a husky-wolf hybrid. His name is Tundra. So, the next book is going to be The Road to Leadville 2, Tundra's Journey. And
oh, wow.
I'm going to take this in an area that I'm really not sure that people are going to like or want or need. It's going to be told from the point of view of the dog.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Interesting concept.
Yeah, and I'm putting a whole lot of thought into this, because I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but...
So, sounds like to me, back in the day, you were an English major or something.
I've always been a fan of literature.
Oh, okay.
And I am certainly a learned guy.
Mm-hmm.
So Jason, you have dedicated your life to Bigfoot. We can certainly tell you're very intelligent, and now you're an author of one with a second book coming out and a documentary. If the layperson, Bob Mcdermott or whatever, wants to get into Bigfoot research, what's your recommendations, your advice on how to do that?
No, that's a loaded question, Bob. Well, first of all, become educated with the area that you're going to. Because I've been involved with a couple of search and rescue efforts, and nobody wants to go up into the woods looking for someone who's lost or missing or hurt or possibly deceased. I mean, this is people who all right, I'm not going to pull any punches. People who want to go out and look for Bigfoot in board shorts and flip-flops are idiots. You have to be prepared for what you're going into. Safety is the primary thing. So the first thing that I would say, if you want to go out and try to find the creature that we know as Bigfoot, is be safe, be careful, be cautious, because there are animals out there that will hurt you.
And Jason, I'd like to add one other thing to that. Let's forget the animals, and you brought up a real good point. I work at a visitor center / museum, okay? And we cover northern New England. That's all I'm going to say because this show's about safety. I had this clown 2 years ago. Right before COVID, 2018, 17. He came in. It was 80 degrees down here in October, okay? So he had shorts on. The girlfriend had like short shorts on and a tank top that didn't leave much for the human imagination. And they wanted the White Mountain Trail guy because they were going to hike Mount Washington. They left Haverhill at 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:15. I actually called the White Mountain where they were going to stop them because they were going to go hike the White Mountains because it was warm down here, dressed like that. You know what was going to happen by the end of the day, right? Yeah, and we'd be reading about them in the news, and you'd have two sad families.
That's what people. I mean,
go ahead, Jason.
The layperson doesn't understand, apparently, what it's like from being on base level to being up in a mountain. And I never go out in the woods without a weapon. I mean, I've been surrounded by coyotes previously, scared to death.
Oh, I bet. That's scary.
It was terrible. I mean, I thought that I was going to get seriously hurt. And that was prior to me carrying a weapon. But now I will not go out in the woods without my handgun.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
It would seem to me, if a layperson, Jason, see what your comments are on this. If a layperson says, wow, I listen to this podcast and I'm really interested in Bigfoot, I've had interest before, doesn't it behoove them to go to find an established team like your own to get into and join? Because you mentioned education, and I think that's probably the best way to get the education, plus the safety factor is already built into a team like yours.
I think that the smartest thing for the layperson to do is to contact an established team and just get a small amount of education.
Right.
Because, I care about people, and I don't want to see anyone hurt, and I don't want to go on any search and rescue missions again, although I have.
Yeah, those aren't easy to do.
No. I mean, I've been on a couple that were successful, and I've been on a couple that were dreadful. And I don't want to do that, and people just need to be educated at least a little bit to know what they're going up against.
Right.
Because going out into the wild is not always easy. It's treacherous. It's potentially dangerous. And it could be wonderful.
Right. And also, for the people listening at home, I know Jason will agree with me on this. I don't care if you got a cell phone or a two-way radio. When you get up into the mountains, most of the time your cell phone doesn't work.
Right. Communications, right. Well, the other aspect of that is that if people are interested in Bigfoot research, what you really don't want to do is to go into any environment not knowing what to look for. I mean, I don't know how a layperson could go into any wooded area and not know what they're looking for. If you look at Jason, who's been doing this for 17 years, your team, Jason, has to have a great understanding of what the evidence is telling you. Whereas a layperson won't get that if they just decide to do this. Correct?
Absolutely. There's so much intricacies into well, Bob, you've been out in the woods with me before. You know
yes.
The type of fine details that I look at.
Correct.
There is so many things that it could be jackpot or nil. You just gotta know what you're looking at. And frankly, I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm looking for. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I've been doing this a long time.
No, you're not tooting your own horn. What do you think about wood knocks and yelps, or whatever you want to call those things? Yips.
Oh, the calls?
The calls, yeah.
They frankly have never worked for me. I've tried to do calls. I've heard a couple, but I've tried to do calls before. I'm not sure if maybe I'm not talking the same language. I really don't know. But I have a friend who lives I think he's in Arizona, and he will do calls and he will get responses like crazy. But I have never had any luck. I guess maybe they're just not that talkative up here in New England.
And same with the wood knocks, right?
Yeah, the wood knocks have never done anything for me.
That's interesting.
So, Jason, could that be an environmental thing? I mean, that maybe in the Pacific Northwest, this being communicates differently than it would in, say, New Hampshire, for example. Is that possible?
Well, honestly, I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
I often wonder if maybe their population in New England is greater than we think, and they don't really have to do wood knocks or vocal.
Or in fact, they don't want to be found.
Well, they certainly don't want to be found.
Right. Because the stories that we've heard from you today, it almost tells me that Bigfoot is very passive, very, very easy to deal with. He abducts a family, apparently, but does no damage to them, doesn't hurt them. So what was his intent, when he abducted him? And it tells me that maybe this particular being is more friendly than people have portrayed him to be, or her to be.
Well, the abduction was in the Pacific Northwest, but I sincerely believe that in New England, they are extremely passive. I really they just want to exist, and they don't want to cause any harm. I mean, there's been 4 times that, I've wound up calling my friend Goliath. If Goliath wanted to hurt me, he's had several chances.
And he has not. So
he has not. He has just been curious and
interesting. I actually have a very controversial question on Bigfoot. You don't have to answer it, okay?
I'd love to answer it.
some people I know in the Bigfoot community, and like I told you off air, I do work with a lot of different people across the board. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Some believe that Bigfoot are interdimensional creatures.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Hey, Tom, what was your question?
I don't know where that started.
Were Bigfoot interdimensional creatures? That was my question.
Oh, okay.
Flesh and blood creatures. And
Okay.
I don't know where the whole interdimensional line of
Yeah.
the line of talk came from. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you know what, though? When you look at UFOs, you look at Bigfoot, they're really not paranormal, interesting enough, right? There's nothing... A paranormal is something that I define, at least, that we know is there, but we can't explain it. It makes no sense. Physics or anything else can't explain it. Bigfoot can be explained.
Correct.
I think that Bigfoot may very well, from the research I did, was crossed over from one continent to another 1,000 years ago when there was the actual bridge between continents. But it's an actual being. So I think Bigfoot exists. I think that the reason people don't see it, can't capture it, and everything else is because it doesn't want to be captured, and it's living in an environment that we really don't understand a lot. You go into the deep, deep woods of New Hampshire in the White Mountain area, there's a good chance you might not come out.
Correct. There's a lot of people.
These areas aren't explored, a lot. So it's not like UFOs that we all look up at the sky at night, all of us. So it's bound to capture things. I don't think UFOs are necessarily paranormal, frankly, because there's evidence, there's plenty of evidence, and there's plenty of Bigfoot evidence that being exists. What people want in the world today is pictures, and they want, all this evidence and hard facts about everything. When, like you said, did you ever see a moose carcass? Oh, no, the answer is no. So what happens to them? I mean, again, I think that in the future, Jason, with iPhones and technology changing the way it is, drones should play a big impact on that. But I think that we'll probably start to see more documented evidence coming out of it, like we do with UFOs. Go back 20 years ago, UFOs were, you had no evidence that they existed. Today, the government has all but come out and said, look, okay, we're going to tell you that UFOs exist, but that's all we're going to tell you. Why? Because there's so much evidence captured about it. And I think that's going to happen with Bigfoot. I think you're going to see over the next, number of years that with the iPhones and all the other technology we talked about, somebody's going to capture this. There's no doubt in my mind that's going to happen. And I hope that when it does, we accept it for what it's worth.
And this contradicts everything that I've said already.
Right.
I do not ever want there to be conclusive proof of Bigfoot existing.
Because?
It will destroy the entire structure of America. It will ruin religion. It will ruin history. And we will crumble with this one thing.
So how do we avoid that from happening?
Leave them alone.
Well, through education, for example?
I mean, I'm still going to look. I mean, I've seen things that I have not published, and I will not, and I will not talk about it. Well,
I respect that. I agree with what you just said, by the way. I think that there were certain things that shouldn't be revealed for the safety of the being. but I'm afraid of technology.
I have a funny feeling that to the layperson, this will sound ridiculous, but if Bigfoot is proven to be real, it will damage the entire structure of the world.
Wow. Wow.
It will immediately be an endangered species, so the timber industry will be, put to a halt. Hunting, fishing will be under strict regulations. It will not be good. I just think that we need to leave him alone.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And I hope that's the message that people take out of this podcast. Because somebody like you, Jason, has compassion, understanding of what you're dealing with. And you really look at it, I think, from a protective perspective much more than anything else. And most people don't have those qualities, frankly.
Well, I love my fellow man, and I love this creature, so there's nothing else I can say.
No, I think you said it all, Jason, really.
Yeah.
You said it all. I mean, when it comes to people I know in the Bigfoot community, you definitely rise above them, all of them, because you're all about protecting the animal, protecting everything, and still trying to see what's out there. So thank you very much. Thank you. Because we don't really know what's out there. It doesn't matter what it is. Bigfoot, Birdman, Mothman, I don't really care who it is. UFOs, paranormal, demons, spirits. We really don't know what's out there. And if any of this stuff can ever be proven, what would happen to the world? You brought up a great point with the Bigfoot end of this, with the timber industry crashing, which would have huge economic impact on our country and the world. The fishing industry collapsing, which would be huge. The hunting industry. I mean, there'd be a lot of industries. Tourism would be hurt too.
Think about the intricacies of what would really happen.
Right.
If this species is proven to exist.
Right.
They would immediately become an endangered species. And just...
Right. And think of this. I mean, you didn't bring this up, but I also, being a history major, I'm a poli-science major, economics, stuff like that. But imagine what it would do to a town like North Conway that relies 98% of their gross product comes on tourism. Imagine what it would do to that with all those restrictions. It would become a ghost town. Sorry for the pun, but it would become a ghost town because there's no big industry out that way. It's tourism. Most of Route 16 would become a ghost town.
Tom, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You certainly have a lot of networking going on in the Bigfoot community. My whole network is Jason, frankly.
Right.
So I follow his philosophy pretty much the same. But the question I have for you, without mentioning names or groups or areas or anything like that, do you find that your connection with Bigfoot community investigators have the same thought process as Jason has?
No, some of them do, some of them don't. A lot of my friends believe and they are friends of mine, but they do believe they're interdimensional creatures. Some of them do, some of them don't. That seems to be the biggest point. And the reason they believe is they've gotten reports, because they've done investigations in Colorado, New Hampshire, the big areas, the Pacific, where someone would see a Bigfoot on a mountain ledge, and by the time they got up there, obviously the Bigfoot's gone, but he went around the corner, and around the corner is a 3,000-foot drop or a 2,000-foot drop, and it's like, where did he go? If an animal collapses, what can happen? Jason, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll deal with that later.
Okay, so let's wrap this up by this question. how do we, Jason, lay people like us, educate the Bigfoot researchers more to the protection side of Bigfoot than the identification side of Bigfoot? How do we do that? Through podcasts? Is there an association that we can refer people to?
Well, I hate to toot my own horn, but they can always contact me.
There's nothing wrong with tooting your own horn. So
yeah. You know what? On this podcast, I'm going to tell you, I applaud you for that, and I encourage people that listen to this podcast and any networking we have to contact you, and that may create a kind of a heavy flow of traffic to you, but we need to educate the public, because today I really got an education on Bigfoot from you, frankly, from a whole different perspective.
And
I thought what you just said was extremely emotionally moving.
Well, I am very emotional about the subject, and I do not want anybody to just randomly go out into the woods and get themselves lost, hurt, injured, whatever. I want I don't know.
I think we know what you want. You want to protect this being.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Safety first, always.
Yeah, safety first when you're going out in the woods. And it doesn't matter if you're going out in the woods to Bigfoot, UFO hunt, or even paranormal hunt. Know your environment and be safe.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be on a couple of ghost hunts with Stars, Seeking the Unknown Realm Society.
Yeah.
Which are a great group of people. And that freaked me out. I would... that much I cannot explain.
Mm-hmm.
What I like is the things that I can explain, and the things that I can explain are large bipedal, hair-covered creatures walking around North America.
Jason, in closing, we have an event coming up in May. We haven't got dates yet for it. And it's kind of a roundtable discussion, open to the public to come in. It would consist of Bigfoot, UFO researchers, paranormal researchers, the witches if they choose to join us, mediums and so forth. There'll probably be a table of 8 or 9 people. Would you be interested in attending that?
I would be honored, Bob.
Well, we would love to have you. The format is that for an hour and a half, we'll take questions from the audience. And I think this is a great way to start to educate the layperson and the public to all kinds of different things, certainly Bigfoot being one of them, as to what's really going on and how witches actually operate and why they operate, so forth. I think that other groups have done this, but Tom and I have been working on this for a while, for about 6 months, as to setting up this roundtable. We have a location. It's in Sandown. And if you are receptive to that, I'll send you the information over the course of the next week or two. And we would love to have you and anybody from your team come down and join us. We're actually going to set up kind of you have to understand the meeting house, but they've got pews, old pews that date back to the 1700s. We're actually going to set each group up in a pew after the discussions and let the public come up and talk to them. So I'm gonna send you an invitation because I think your message is something that I want more people to hear.
Me too.
And I would love for people to hear, understand, and believe my message. Because
Yeah.
I feel as though my message is very true.
And very important. Okay, Jason, thank you so much for coming on with us today. This has just been a great podcast for us because it's got some facts but more importantly, it's been an education. It's been an education for me for sure. So I know our listeners out there have really, really made the turn to say, wow, a different perspective that I'm not sure that we all get to hear from everybody. So
right.
Thank you so much for coming on with us. And I would love to have you back on in a couple of weeks because I think there's a lot more information here we need to get out.
I'm just a message away.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
There you go, my friend.
I appreciate you having me on, and thank you very much. And I just am very passionate about this subject. And
I know you are.
That you are.
Yeah,
right.
And thank you for all your hard work and dedication.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. And thank you for coming on today. We'll have you back in a few weeks. And Bob, it was a great show today. So thank you very much for getting this great guest.
I'll talk to you next week, my friend.
All right.
We'll see you, Bob.
See ya.
Bye.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in to another great episode of the Paranormal Zone with my good friend, colleague Bob Mcdermott and Tom Spitalere here. We're signing off. Have a great evening, everybody, and have a great day.
Have a great day.